First thing I'm looking for is the officer okay, right? Once I get through that, then
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, no, always,
Yeah,
always. It's the first question, always. Or the officer's around. Then I go back and I really read it again, right? And they're kind of younger. The last few times it's been 2, 3 years, 7 years. It's not like, 20, 30 years.
There's
right?
the experience being lost.
Right. So that's data. That's real, right? Like that's showing us what's going on. So very honestly, I think that there should be some kind of mentoring.
To barricade a suspect. And they go back in there. One of the first, and I heard this from my buddies there, one of the first questions the chief asked, what color is he? And when he heard that he was an African-American, we're going to be here a while. Wait a minute. How does that dictate how long we're going to be here? You know what I mean? And that's what's going on in a lot of ways. It happens a lot. We used to operate under the ask, tell, make. We ask you, we tell you, and then we make you. And for years we operated under that. He goes, ask, tell, make. Isn't that a little harsh? No, it's not. Because what we've gotten into with de-escalation is we ask again, we beg. And during that time, this crook's mind, his cycle, what we call the OODA loop, observe, orientate, decide, and act, is finishing.
I have a real problem with that. I mean, I don't want to look an officer in the face and say, he only gets 45 years, but you spend your whole life without it, right? That's not representation.
Blu Wolf Podcast.
This episode of the Blu Wolf Podcast is brought to you by Blue Line Professional Inspections. Check out blproinspections.com or call 210-771-8831 for all your inspection needs, including home inspection, wood-destroying insect inspection, sewer drain inspection, and on-site water treatment inspection. Blue Line is a first responder-owned business.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Blu Wolf Podcast. I'm Willie Cantu. I'm with my partner in crime, David Sapansky, for another exciting episode of podcast with a very special guest. She is well known in the community of San Antonio, Bexar County as well. Done a lot of work within the city government, current councilwoman of District 6. And we'll roll on to talk about all the organizations you've been involved in and prior to that. But I just want to get into it. Welcome. Thank you so much
for having me.
For being here. I'll tell you one thing that I respect with anyone is that you sought us out.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Right. Well, I actually sought her. Right.
Okay. I'll take credit for it.
Yeah.
Well, you said you approached him and you said, hey, and it was initial, and said that you want to be on the podcast.
Oh.
So, I mean, I appreciate
I'm grateful for the opportunity always. I mean, I love this city. I'm born and raised here, and I want to talk to as many people as possible. But I mostly want to hear from as many people as possible. That's really what's important to me in public service is I believe in true democracy, right? I'm a representative. So in order to represent, I have to hear. And that means people that you agree with, people you don't agree with, people you don't know about, learning more and more and more. So I'm just really honored to be here.
We're happy to have you. Thank you for coming. We know your schedule is very busy.
Yeah, and especially on a Friday. I don't know if the city has federal Fridays like the feds do, right? I mean, we know that, not yet.
The job of a council person is never done. I work 24/7.
Yeah. So you're homegrown. I read that. Well, for one, you grew up on the west side, but more so than northwest side. Am I right?
Yeah. So I was actually born in a little neighborhood called Flavor Park, so inner west side, and ended up going to Taft High School. So that was back then. It was out in the middle of nowhere. Right now, it's all Alamo Ranch. Right. But I'm really grateful because I grew up in the area that I now represent. So It really is in a lot of ways my love letter to my hometown, my public service, because they raised me, right? They gave me the opportunities that I have to be able to represent them now.
What an accomplishment. I mean, to be one of the higher representatives of your neighborhood, your stomping grounds.
It really is. Yeah. My, the fact that I get to represent, I knock on doors and talk with people and I see, I'm like, Mrs. Martinez, like I knew her because I went to elementary school with her kid or something, that's really just what San Antonio is about, right? I mean, I really am, at the end of the day, just more than anything, grateful.
Have you always been drawn to like public service, maybe from a very early age?
Well, I'll tell you a little story if you indulge me. When I was a little kid, I was, my grandfather was not a formally educated man. He was a carpenter, painter, mostly spoke Spanish. But when I remember there's one instance that I always say sparked my love for community. And it's an advocacy is this walk with my grandfather. We're in a walk in his neighborhood. And I remember, a little 8-year-old kid or so, and I was kicking at the grass. And I looked up at him and I said, how come you don't have sidewalks in your neighborhood? And he looked down at me and said, porque no les importamos. They don't care about us. And there was a little spark. I mean, I got pissed. I was not happy that whoever they were didn't care about this man who was like this great man in my life, right? And I didn't really understand it then, but that spark grew into a fire as I grew up, because it was what I eventually learned was that he didn't think that local government was for him. Born and raised in this city, just like me, hardworking man, raised 8 successful children with my grandmother. And he didn't think that local government was set up to help you, and didn't even, look into it. So as I grew up, it led me to become an attorney to help people. I'm a disability attorney, so I help people with special needs. I always joke that I'm a lawyer that sleeps well at night. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm helping.
Okay.
But then also led me to run for office. So that little spark is the fire that ended up growing and leading me to help my community, because so many San Antonians do not believe that government is for them. It shows in our voting records. We don't, unfortunately, not a lot of us, the community votes. It shows in their apathy, who cares about me down there? And so that's what I try to do every day, is just show up in the neighborhood, knock on doors, talk to people where they are, not come to me at City Hall or come to me at my field office. I go to where they are, where they work, where they play, and where they live. I literally knock on their doors to find out what they're looking for. So it's just something that's really
you want to connect, right? Reconnect, connecting, and then reconnect, right?
Right.
Yeah. So you majored in political science.
I did, yeah.
And then you got your JD.
And it's funny, I never actually intended to run for office. Y'all will probably laugh, but I'm naturally more of a shy person, a little more of an introvert. So it takes a lot for me to kind of be out there, but it's that drive, it's that spark, that fire for this community, not just my area of town, but my entire city. My parents grew up very inner city. My mom went to Fox Tech. My dad went to Lanier, was very inner city.
Oh, yeah,
and Chili Bowl always got a little tricky for us, right? Yeah. But I have family all over, big family, and they're all over the city. And just traveling around the city and seeing some of the areas that have, some that have not. And I just learned so much about my community growing up here because of my experience.
Sadly, there's still a lot of people in the community that feel that city
Absolutely.
government is not on their side, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, you could take that to every level of
Yes.
government, but today we're talking about this level
Yeah.
of government. Right?
And it doesn't necessarily mean just people that are living in poverty. All over the political spectrum, the economic spectrum, people don't think that local government is there to work for them.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things I've really strived hard to work for while I'm in office. I represent about a third of Edgewood, and I go all the way over to Alamo Ranch right now. That's very diverse, economically, socially.
Absolutely.
Who did the mapping?
I know.
mean, you've got this all the way down to 90,
Yeah.
and then there's this strip that goes up, and then it opens up at the Alamo Ranch.
Yes. Yeah. And it's just part of Alamo Ranch because most of it is the county. It goes up and it circles my high school, Taft. So I answered the San Antonio question. I went to Taft, and then Government Canyon. It's super odd. I am thankful we have Government Canyon. It's a good asset for the city to have. I always joke that I'm the only district in the city that has dinosaur tracks because of Government Canyon, right?
Yeah.
But it's very diverse. And I'll tell you that it's a challenge, but I have really enjoyed it. Because we talk about public safety in Edgewood, we talk about public safety in Westover Hills, we talk about it in Alamo Ranch.
Very different.
It's different kind of aspects of it.
Sure, of course.
But that's our number one job as a council member is to make sure our city, our community is safe.
Yeah, and the needs and priorities are different in different sides of town,
Exactly.
right? It's amazing.
Yes, you go to certain areas of town, and when I talk about public safety or when I hear about public safety, it's prostitution, drugs, assault, right? Go to a different area of town, and their biggest concern, and it is a concern, is property theft, right?
Yeah.
Packages on their porches, cars, things like that. All public safety, all important. Some very different than others, right? So I've really learned how to keep the consistent message about how important public safety is, but talk about it like in Edgewood the way they want to talk about it. Talk about it in Alamo Ranch the way they want to talk about it, and more than that, finding those solutions. So I'll tell you, you probably read, but I'm chair of our public safety committee, and I have been since I got elected. because number one, it's just so important to our community. I can't stress enough. It's our number one job is keeping our community safe. Now, keeping our community safe, obviously, physically, mentally, their water, their lights are on, right? There's a lot of safety that's a broad definition. But that's our number one job. So going to these different communities and talking with them about what they're seeing when they look out their front door, that's essentially what we take care of as local government, right? When you look out your front door, all of that is local government, streets, drainage, public safety, and that's really important. So back to, we were saying how diverse it is. I spent a lot of time and money and resources in the inner part of my district because they have more pressing needs in some ways, right? More urgent needs. And I got told by some older, like some previous council members, stop spending so much time in Edgewood. They don't vote. And it breaks my heart because I'm not here because they vote. I'm here because they need it. I ran on sidewalks, I told my grandfather's story. I want to increase sidewalks. I'm really thankful to say that I have the fewest sidewalk gaps in the city because I focused on it, right? Really made sure that neighborhoods, especially the older neighborhoods that didn't have developers build their sidewalks, that they have sidewalks. That's public safety.
And they don't really take into consideration why they don't vote, right? It kind of
Yes.
goes back to what you're saying. They don't think it matters, right?
They don't think it matters. Nobody cares about me. Nobody loves me. So I went in and I showed up a whole bunch of love. And I'm really proud to say that in my time in District 6, the voting numbers have gone up in those neighborhoods, because they're like, finally, this person cares, right? I'm not saying,
keep you.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that people didn't care about them before, but to me, care and love is showing you resources, right?
Sure.
Pointing those public dollars. And then our safety numbers have gone down. We get the, that's what I was getting at earlier. I'm chair of public safety, and we get, once a quarter, we get the crime stats. And just the other day, we got that crime is down, violent crime is down overall 22% in the city. That's a big number. That's because we're making sure that our officers have the equipment and
22% for the whole city or 22% in the hotspot area? Because I read it differently.
I'm understanding the whole city, 22% overall. And then 6%, 6% was trying to think now.
That's what
I think 6% was 2024. Let's fact check that though. But let's go with yours. Let's just say it's just the hot spots, right? The 20%. Because I do remember the researchers saying that they checked the areas around it. Because one of my criticisms early on was, so you focus on the hot spot and then the bad guys go the other places,
22%
right?
would just be a huge decrease. I mean, that would be like a touting thing.
Remember, it's just violent crime, though, not property crime.
So that and that's you're kind of moving into the areas that we were going to get to eventually.
Sorry.
But no, it's okay.
I get excited.
This is the conversation. No, this is the conversation. I mean, we can script it somewhat. I hate scripted things.
Yeah.
But since you're talking about it, and obviously we're talking about the stats. Number one, and we're both here to be, or all of us here to be honest. I don't believe that crime is down, and I try to take the pulse of the city in my own realm. Obviously, we're not out there beating the streets like we used to, but social media, conversations with people that we know, and by virtue of what we're doing now, we get a lot of people reaching out to us, just, whether it be here, whether it be text, whether it be messenger or whatever. And one of the telltale signs was when the city on their Facebook page posted the stats saying they were down. I went to read the comments, and obviously I wasn't reading thousands of them or hundreds of them, but the majority of them were like, they didn't believe them because they feel that because a lot of them are victims of crime and in whatever way. One thing I don't like is this separation, because it is a tactic of how they separated violent crimes. And I get these categories.
Yeah.
But like say burglary of a vehicle, that's considered a nonviolent crime, right? I was shot in 1991 by a car burglar. So, and then not long ago, we had a vehicle owner shot at the Twin Peaks parking lot who caught someone burglarizing his vehicle. He got shot and killed. When we have a unit, and I retired from repeat offenders program that's no longer there. That's a whole nother story. But we had a unit within that unit that was called FIT. Do you remember what FIT stood for?
It was a fencing operation.
Yeah,
So what they were trying to do is concentrate on people buying stolen property.
Property crimes, right? And those guys were all, because they would get tips. They had guys that they knew and asset loss and protection, and say Home Depot and Lowe's. Hey, got so and so here. He's prowling. So they'd go out there and they'd set up in the parking lot. They'd send somebody inside. They're all plain clothes, They were always, every time they were getting ready to take that person down, it was a foot chase or a car chase and a fight. And there's nothing there's nothing nonviolent about that. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And so when we separate that, and people might say, well, let them. Don't. It's whatever you have in your car is not worth the risk. Well, some people might take that, but some people are like, no, that's my car. You don't get, I locked it for a reason. You don't get to come in there. And so I think that when they harp and they separate that in violent crime, not to mention, and I'm probably getting way ahead of myself, the recategorization of certain crimes considered violent crime. So I don't believe the stats. I don't believe the chief. And he and I don't have a bone to pick with the chief. He treated us fairly when we were there, employed there. It's just the pulse that we see,
Yeah. So you bring up a really good point. The data is showing that crime is down when there, and that's data, but that is different than how we feel. And so part of I have these 3 pillars that I'm running on. One is that City Hall should work for you. The second one is you should feel safe in your neighborhood. That was very intentional, because I can run around and tell you, property crime is down 6%. And you're like, yeah, because my car just got stolen. Like, you don't care about that number, right? And then lastly, there's that we should have opportunities here at home. So I think what you bring up is a very important nuance. What I will say, my understanding is if there's burglary of a vehicle and somebody's shot, it's the violent crime that gets reported. It's not the burglary, because they use the NIBRs.
That's changed though, right?
And that's been a problem too with the reporting.
Exactly. So I entirely understand that.
But crime's personal, right? Like anybody that's touched by crime,
that's exactly
it's personal to them.
That's
if it's a rape, a homicide, an assault, a robbery, or a burglary.
That's exactly right. And that's what I'm getting at, is that the nuance between the numbers, the data, and the and how you feel and how you like your experience. There's people that have gotten their car broken and over and over. Their neighbor has never gotten their car broken into, right? Like, so maybe one feels super safe. The very next door neighbor feels very, very unsafe, right?
And this is Texas, so a lot of people have guns in the cars, and then a burglary vehicle can become a felony. But I know we're getting into this area, but I really wanted to ask you about it. I looked at your page, and it says that you're talking about your major concerns or your mayoral focus points were lowering taxes, which is important to me.
Yes, of course.
And everyone. Yeah. And then it's public safety and increasing housing options. So can you talk a little bit about those?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll tell you, it really is kind of not just tax dollars, which of course are very important, but it's all of our dollars, right? So a couple of years ago, I introduced a policy proposal to CPS, where the city owns CPS and SAWS. CPS gives us 14% of their revenue every year. Gives the city 14%. We use that 14% for funding things like streets, drainage, sidewalks. So I proposed because the CPS was already forecasting they were going to ask us for another rate increase. They asked for one a couple of years ago, and so I said, hey, let's give 2% of that budget back to CPS. This is general fund. It's not the public safety money. It's not like enterprise fund. It's 2% of the general fund. Give it back. That was just kind of the starting of the negotiation, right? Over a number of months, we came up with, and by the way, it was very much pushed back by the city, by some of the council colleagues, because they want that money for their things, right? And I said, look, we have had these really, really hot summers, and so we're all paying more money to CPS, and there's this surplus. What we're now doing is giving a percentage of the surplus back to CPS.
For what?
And that was a big part of it. They have to use it to update the infrastructure. They have to do it. My thing was to mitigate a rate increase, going back to the dollars, right? So essentially, that is what happened. CPS just announced that they're not going to ask us for a rate increase this year, and they had already said they were going to. So it's part of that funding that went back into CPS infrastructure to make sure that our everything's working right, and the infrastructure, but also so that we wouldn't have to pay more. Now, people are going to say, That's $3 a month. Like, come on, right? But I remember back when we were asking for the rate increase, that's $3 a month. Hey, so which one is it, right? But here's the thing, though. It was either that we give you back those dollars in your pocket so you can buy more eggs these days, right? Or we're all put all that money in the middle of the table, and here come all the council members scrapping because I want this project in my district, or I want that in my district. And there was no focus. So let's have a policy. Let's focus on that policy. And let's get input from the community, which we did, and they supported it. I got so much pushback initially, and then here comes the community. No, I want those dollars back in my pocket. And so everybody's like, oh, okay, So
what are they saying now that it improved what you were trying to do was right?
Exactly. And I had to wait a year, but I believed in it mainly because the community was asking for it, because we shouldn't take our dollars and just put this towards random. Not that they're not all important, but they're just kind of all over the place and scattered. It's like that thing. If you give, have $1 million to give everybody just a couple, what do we really have, right? Focus those dollars. So we focused them on CPS and told them how to spend it. And they did mitigate, as a matter of fact, right now, they're not asking us for a rate increase. Now, are they going to in 2 years, 3 years? Probably, right? But right now they didn't. And if they ask us for another one in 3 years, we're not compounding that.
And that's always a big deal in July and August when they start to have these rolling little period brownouts, whatever they call it. Right? Yeah. And so, yeah.
So that's one of them. My first term, we voted on a property tax decrease, and that was.
Can you do that again?
Yeah. Please? Well, we have to. We started off with a certain percentage, but we can max that out. So yes, absolutely. And it's city property taxes. We're not the big dollars. It's, the property tax big dollars are really school. But hey, every single dollar right now in this economy, we have to worry about
school
that.
Counts for about half of my property taxes.
Yes, it does. Yeah. I'm the only one on city council right now that voted against a pay raise for our city manager. I think he's doing a great job, but $100,000. None of us,
That was a pay raise?
So since you brought that up, and I had no intention of talking about that, it is very interesting to see that before he took that position with Cheryl, council voted to max the amount of money that the city manager could get paid.
The voter did.
The voters did, right?
Yeah.
So the voters did.
Yeah.
And here we are, 5 years later? And now we're given exactly the same, because you remember when Cheryl originally was sought after to come to the job, she didn't take it.
Yeah.
Because she wanted more money. Right. And then council had come back. It might have been right before your.
Yeah, I didn't.
But then they wound up, and I don't know, it's Harburger or somebody like that.
Yeah. Eric was installed, I think, in March, and I was elected in May. So
yeah.
I've never.
It's just interesting to see how, that kind of stuff moves around, because at the end of the day, the same voters voted to give it to him.
To give it back.
Or give it to him.
To remove the cap, and then to remove the what I'll call a term, right? Because they can only serve 8 years. So that's the voter. And I'm thankful that people are voting first, but, they made their choice, and that's fine. But I still think it's, really bad idea to ask the taxpayer, our community, to give $100,000 raise, right off they voted that in November. We gave him the raise in January. And I say I didn't vote for it, but the council did.
I was going to ask you what the outcome was.
I was the only one that voted against it. 10 members voted for it.
Yeah.
And
now, what do you think that all the others' agreement to do that was for?
I do believe that there's a consensus that Eric's doing a good job. I do too. You like the guy, you have a relationship, we work together all the time with him, but I'm not there to get along with people. I'm there to advocate for my community. I'm there to fight for the people like my grandfather you're not working for me. That day I was working for San Antonio. They did not, you go out and ask, throw a rock and hit somebody that wanted to give him a raise, probably not, right? But also I advocated against council pay. I don't think it was right to ask for that either. When I ran for office, I knew what I was running for. I knew that I was only going to get so much money. You don't do it for money. You do it for the love.
It used to be a lot lower.
$20 a month.
Yeah.
$20 a month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's a big city now, right? It's a multi-billion dollar. What's the budget? $4 billion almost, right? Policing and fire is what? 66% of the judge.
Yeah, right? It's actually 61 or 62.
So, it's big dollars,
It
right?
is. We're talking big dollars.
So you're a lawyer and a realtor, but some people that come in maybe aren't. So,
and that was the the equity argument, right? And rightly so. I get it. We want all different kinds of people to run for office. We want representatives of our community to reflect the community that we represent. Absolutely. The first time I got elected, I was 2019. I was it was the first time ever we had a majority woman council. That's pretty representative of our community. Not only that, but the majority of the women were people of color. Again, very representative of our community. We did that without the pay raise. I mean, it's possible. Again, I don't knock like people that run for office because there is an opportunity to, they're able to do it because they get an income from it, right? But you don't do it for anything. You shouldn't be doing it for anything other.
But that's why the pay was so low back then. It's kind of like teachers. They wanted you to come in there for the calling rather than the pay.
Or police officers.
Sure.
Yeah, right. And I understand
their
their wages are a little more, but I mean, to your point, Eric gets $100,000 raise every so many years. Police department has to, scratch and claw and go with council and back and forth and all of this stuff to get a 3% or 4% raise or over 5 years.
Now, was that just for Eric or was it for Villa Gomez as well?
Just for Eric.
No raise for her.
No raise for her. It was just for Eric, because there wasn't a cap on. There was only a cap by charter because of that charter amendment on the city manager. The rest of them were getting kind of like any other city employee, they were raising. Well,
it's interesting to hear that you said that, because I mean, I love the fact that you said, hey, look, I like the guy, but business is business. Right. I represent them, right?
That's right.
And I know in 2024, you kind of went around city attorney, right? Yeah. In Segovia, right?
Yeah, I sure did.
And I love the fact
public safety thing.
Yeah, it was a public safety, but it was with fire, right? And so you and some of your colleagues got out there, and I think, did you call for his removal? Yeah.
I did.
Yeah, so you did, but my point is, so you're not afraid to do it should that be necessary, right?
Small but mighty.
Yeah, because
I mean, I appreciate that. And the story behind that was, we as a council, we're like the board of a corporation.
Oh, I got to say the name because it's just too cool for me. It's like the political evolution of you.
Yeah, right? There was an article about it.
Yeah, and I thought that was...
I go back to I'm naturally, I'm San Antonian. I work hard. I keep my head down. I work for my community. I love doing it. I wasn't looking for the drama or the accolade, right? You just do the work that you want to do. But when you get told, no, you don't get to do that by people who are not elected, you're not telling me, Melissa, I can't do that. You're telling 150,000 people behind me that I represent, no, they don't get what they want.
And that's the San Antonio culture. It has been, right? Go along to get along, right?
So, yeah. I do think we're really hard workers, and I think that's what I was doing. And I was, I'm doing really good work. I'm really grateful for the work that we've been able to do in our community. But we're the board, and the city manager is like the CEO. So we as a board tell the CEO, this is what we want to see. These are our policies, right? You go execute. We don't get to tell him who to hire and fire. We don't get to tell him, that day in and day out, running the business. We're just of the city, right?
But you can be on the council as a whole could be unhappy with his decisions on who he doesn't hire, but who he doesn't fire.
Exactly. Or in a particular instance, we were directing him on how we wanted the negotiations with the fire unit to go for our fire contract. And I'll be, it was all public, but wages, focus on wages. We wanted to make sure that our firefighters had not just them, but their families have what they need to be secure in their lives. Just like any other public safety officer, you need everything that you need on the job, but you also need that security for your family, right? So we wanted them to focus on wages. So they would go into these negotiations and they were not talking about the things that we asked them to talk about. The negotiations are just like the police contract. They're open. You can just see them. Anybody can watch them on YouTube, right? So they weren't going the way we kept telling them that we wanted them to go, them being the city. The city was not negotiating the way we asked them to. So we wanted to have an executive session about the fire, how they were going. And we were getting told, no. We were in a B session. And one of the council members said, we want to talk about this. We called for an executive session. The mayor shut the meeting down, said, nope, you can't. I went running after Andy. It was a little bit of inside baseball, right? And I said, hey, he's city attorney. Hey, city attorney, who can call a special session? Who can call an executive session? And he said, the mayor or the city manager. And I said, that's it? And he said, yes. And I said, okay, well, can you come talk to some of the other council members because they wanted to know too? And he said, finger in my face, no, I will only talk to you.
So why do you think he got like that? Because it's been this is my contention. I think you're agreeing, right? And I'm going to make the case a little. Like, we're public safety, right? We've spent 33 years working for the police department. We have been very vocal, not disrespectfully vocal, but vocal about some leadership issues in the police department. Sure. We believe that to be true. We've made our points various times. But at the end of the day, don't you think that sometimes people just get so entrenched in their own position that they no longer think they answer to people, like council or the citizens or the people that work for them?
And every single city employee, every single council person, the mayor, the city manager, the city attorney is responsible to you, to y'all as SAPD.
Conceptually.
Right? Well, but I don't forget that. I remind myself of that every day, though they're my boss, right? So it's not the city manager, it's not the city attorney, it's not the mayor. The people are my boss, right? So people aren't being reminded of that. So I reminded them. I had some council members that agreed with me. Number one, that advice was wrong. We as a council, 3 council members can call for a special
So
session.
the city attorney didn't know what the charter was.
Well, did he not know or did he not say? Right.
Yeah.
So I went and we did what's called a 3-signature memo. It's in the charter. You can do it. We did it. And we said, we want a special meeting because we want to talk about this fire contract. There were actually 5 of us. We call ourselves a block of fire, right? Or we didn't actually. Somebody else did.
You're not the squad, are you?
I'm sorry?
You're not.
No. And actually, and look at who was on there. It was span the political spectrum. We had the most conservative, one of the most progressive, me pretty square in the middle, we went into the memo, followed the charter. The city attorney came out I was sitting on the bench outside City Hall waiting for, my husband was going to pick me up. And he came in and said,
Was he late? Because I'm never allowed to.
No.
Okay.
I think I walked outside because I was working that day.
I just want to know if there's a rule change I need to bring.
No. He's never late. He's a high school administrator that cannot.
Yeah.
But, so the city attorney comes out. I'm sitting on the bench, kind of like minding my business. He says, "Hey, let's talk about this now." I said, "Oh, no, don't worry. Would you care? We just did a 3-signature memo." He said, "I know." And he wasn't going to honor that memo. He doesn't get to decide that. That's the charter. So that's when I was like, no, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to do that. You're screwing over the people of the city. So the next day we got to the City Hall steps and, the 5 of us that agreed that you don't get to just call your own shots. You don't get to make up the rules as you go. And we said, we demanded this meeting, and a reporter asked me, "Do you want Andy out?" And I was like, "Yeah, I kind of do." Right. Like I was more pointed about it, but I'll admit that it was kind of,
Was it just that, or was there other things? Because, making a decision like that,
Sure.
You're gone for one thing.
No, it was a lot of
so many other things that we won't get into, obviously.
Yeah, it was a lead up. There's definitely some advice that I didn't think he was giving us that was good legal advice. And I'll tell you that one of the things I like to put back on the charter ballot is that the city attorney is supposed to represent the people of San Antonio as council members, or we're the representatives of the community. But he also represents the city. Sometimes we conflict. Y'all know this. When an attorney has a conflict, you can't have a conflict, right? So you should recuse yourself.
But he also has to follow the laws, the charter.
100%.
So what happened with that? He's still the city attorney.
He still is. He's one of the. We don't get to get involved in hire and fire, right? So I probably shouldn't.
No,
said that
and
openly,
I'm
but
not
I
trying to
did.
get you down the wrong rabbit hole, but I mean, does the city manager come to you as a council person and say, "Hey, I want to talk to you about your concerns on the steps of City Hall"? I mean, do you guys have those?
We did after that.
Yeah.
But we had to go that far. I felt like we had to take that step, and you know what? That's what I'm saying. We have to be as transparent and as accountable as possible.
You
So
think
we took
Eric
it to
is
the
very
steps.
receptive to that kind of feedback? Like, "Hey, I want you to know what's going on so you can take action,"
Yeah, I do.
because we've contended. So we both retired from the police department, right? Different levels, right? And I was a captain for 12 years and an interim for one period, about 7 months. And then I was offered again and I turned it down. There were some high level people on the police department that left that provided exit interviews to Eric Walsh and Maria Villalobos. And they were very scathing that we didn't write it. We just told you about it.
Do you know anything else about this?
I've heard, nothing specific. I just understand that and I think that's not unusual. I think when people leave and they give you your constructive criticism, right? What they do with that, I don't know.
Yeah. So we're not going to get into all the meat and potatoes of it because that's already been done. But I'm just saying, at the end of the day, what you said, you work for the citizens of San Antonio, right? Oh, that is the police department. You want a healthy workforce, right? A healthy work life. Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is if Eric and Maria are aware of these things, okay, 2 people is 2 people, right? But when in 2016, there was a no confidence vote against the chief and then Cheryl just dismissed it. So, I mean, like to your point with Andy, right? You saw these things occurring and ultimately you spoke out. When you start to see a pattern, do they listen
Well, I'll tell you that in this case, I do believe that they did. Now, we had to bring it to the city hall steps. We had to make it public. Since then, and let me be very clear, the very next week, I shook Andy's hand. We have to still work together. It's business, right?
That's professionals, right?
Right. We have to be professionals. And I do believe that they're much more thoughtful in their response to when we ask for things. Every signature memo gets honored. I mean, they're following the rules, right?
You held him accountable to something, and now he knows that, hey, it's not going to be as easy as he thought.
So I'll tell you, to jump just a little bit, that's my concern about this next mayor. There's a bunch of people running that have no experience at city council. And if they don't know all of this history, if they don't know that they'll get steamrolled, they're going to get steamrolled. And you're going to have also 4 new council members.
So you're talking about somebody in particular?
Everybody that does never.
Because there's like 28 of them, right?
Anybody that has not sat on city council.
Because there's 4 of you running from council?
Well, 5 because Councilman Perry is former council member.
Okay, yeah. So no, that's interesting because we had Manny Pelaez on here and we had Pablo, which is not, he was a former state.
Secretary of State.
Yeah, Secretary of State. And so, a lot of them talk about the very same thing, but I'm with you. I really do believe it's nice to get an outsider, conceptually get somebody in to kind of break it up a little bit. Sure. But I'm sure the first year you were on city council, it was like literally being thrown in the deep end of the pool.
Sure.
You don't know who's telling you the truth. They're running game on you. The managers working you because they want you what you want, and it's a lot, right? Mayor's more.
Now, put on top of that you're going to be leading a council with 4 brand new members. That's potentially 5 new members of council. Those 4 that have experience, they're not the majority anymore, right? And it's going to be very difficult. And not only that, but they're also going to be just some of them are second termers. I mean, it's dangerous in my
rookies,
right? Yeah. It's dangerous to hire a rookie. You can't have on the job training. You cannot that experience. I get let's come in. I'm brand new. Let's disrupt. I get it, but I've been here and I still am disrupting. I will continue because I'm going to make sure that we're transparent and accountable. Those are words everybody says, but I can tell you, I'm not saying what I want to do, what I should do. I'm saying what I've done, and I will continue to do. So I think that really makes a difference.
I think I 100% agree. There's no substitute for experience. Like you can learn off television or key cards or debates or whatever it is. Yeah. But when you get in the game, you're in the game.
Right. Look at your jobs. Look at your professions, right? Look at you, your second, third year. Look at you now, the experience that you, and you can't read that in a book. You don't get that in training. It's the experience that you're endured every day. You know how to make those calls.
I always make the analogy of like you can't turn up the heat to make the cake faster. It's not going to come out well, it's all in its own time. And one of the things that, of course, we should have talked about this before we went on air, and I don't want to get too long-winded, but as you're probably already noticing, we're extremely concerned about public safety. And really, because we're retired and, we've got whatever else is going on. I don't live in the city, but I live in the county. Okay. So, but we're still connected to the members and law enforcement, definitely SAPD, people in Bexar County, other agencies that we've had the pleasure of doing business with. And one thing that we saw when we interviewed one of the other mayoral candidates was, as I've mentioned to you about not believing the stats. Mm-hmm. Well, you are on the committee, and then you have the right people there, and just especially the head, say the chief, he tells you something, and you have no reason not to believe it.
Well, yeah,
right. I mean, so that's what I'm talking about, because he will come in, and he's got a job to protect himself, understandably, and what we're advocating, and this one of the reasons that this podcast took off. It started with me, and then I ran into David at a bank, cool. And we started talking. We're at the same academy class.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What was it? Wait.
1989.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, we run into each other, and I'm a big believer in chance.
Yeah.
And we get to talking. Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I'm retired. I'm retired before you a little bit, and then told myself, podcast, and with the light. So we got to talking, and next thing you know, things have blown up, and obviously our forte is public safety, police work, even the tactics. So I was on SWAT for a long time, and all. So, but that is our concern, and obviously to do the right thing. So when we see these, and obviously it's political, these numbers or these responses to situations that are serious to the community. And I have a really good, and I think he does too, talent for not really paying attention and hearing something and go, that's bullshit. Right off the bat.
It's a good talent. Well, I'm sure from your police work, right?
Yeah. You can't turn it off, you know. And then we're seeing these things occur, and a lot of them are personal, you know, where we're seeing that the destruction within the department of when you talked about rookies and experience, we've lost a lot of people that number one, just because they had time. Like I left, it was time. I was reaching 33. I wasn't going to spin my wheels. You know, I didn't have anything set up, but you know, it was time to go. But a lot of officers, and what we're hearing is that they know they're close. And a lot of them came in going, well, I'm going to retire. I'm going to do 33 years and retire at this time. But now because of the climate, and again, nothing really at the fault necessarily of San Antonio. It's just, it was the climate in law enforcement across the country. They would start going to the pension office and trying to compute the numbers. Like, how soon can I go?
Yeah.
You know,
I was in the Fire and Police Pension Board.
Were you? Okay. Yeah. And so, you know, some were like, well, you know, I can sell steel. I could pick up cans. You know, I'm joking, but you know, I could walk dogs. Looking for options to leave and all that. And so that's our concern. And so you're losing that experience. And to get a real number on that would be to go to the pension website. You can see all the people that retired in that year. The other thing you can't put a number on are the people that resigned, unless you go to the city office and, you know, some open records type of stuff. And I always say, you know, I was a detective in a covert unit, and we relied on information from confidential informants, snitches, you know. And I was only a detective for like 9 years, you know. And I always said I'm never going to be as good a detective as I was a patrolman, because I was a patrolman for 25 years. You know what I mean? And now, because of what we do, I have more confidential informants than I ever did, because and meaning so about the concerns of public safety from the police department and stuff like that. And obviously I won't reveal my sources on things, and they're telling me in confidence, but the general atmosphere and the consensus of them is they're just like defeated. So
that can I just ask? So you've been on council 6 years?
Yes.
And you're termed, right?
No, I have one more. Potentially one more.
Okay. But you're going to move on.
Right.
That's
Let's see.
And so being on council for so long, being the head of the public safety committee, I'm just going to ask you like straight away, what do you think the culture or the climate is of the police department? Do you think it's healthy
within the police department? So when I think it's healthy with each other.
You talking about peer to peer?
Peer to peer.
Okay, I 100% agree.
Yeah. Okay. Now, when we get these presentations from the chief or from the doctor from UTSA, all of that,
Dr. Smith.
Dr. Smith, right? I listen. We get the presentations. We get the presentation, of course, live, and it's the first time I'm hearing it, but we'll get the slides. So I'm really thankful. I have good relationships with actual police officers, boots on the ground. Of course, I have a really good relationship with, I shouldn't say of course, because maybe not, right? But I do have a good relationship with the union. And I ask them questions because I don't know what I don't know, but y'all do, right? So I talk to those officers. I talk to the union reps to find out what's this about. So when I'm getting this information from whoever that is, I'm able to be more critical. Am I catching every little thing? No, because I'm not boots on the ground myself. Mm-hmm. But as much as I can, I'm talking to them.
Well, I'll say it right now. I don't believe them either, and we have started calling them out. And it's the union.
Oh, the union.
Union.
Yeah, and I understand. Yeah, but I don't just talk to union members. I talk to actual.
But before we go down that road, so what do you? I still would like to know. What do you think the culture is of the police department, or the confidence of the police officers in their leadership?
In their own leadership, I don't think it's high, and I get that consistently from police officers that I just know because we just grew up here, right? And I do love that about PD is that you do try to.
It's a big Big, what is that? A little big town,
right?
San Antonio.
Absolutely, I sure do.
Or
Yeah.
crooks.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. They know each other, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's actual police officers doing the work, boots on the ground. And I'm not saying the union members don't, but our union leadership doesn't do that, because they do, but also them. It's not just one or the other, it's both. But back to your question, because I'm talking to them more and more, I do hear a consistent message that there's not as much confidence in leadership. That's on ultimately it's on the city manager, but let me strike that. Ultimately, it's on us. It's up to the city manager to execute. So there's some conversations to be had there, right? I mean, we had a fire chief that was let go a couple of years ago. We hired from within. I love that. I love that Chief Frausto with the fire that she came from. She was hired as a firefighter. She worked her way up. That's like the most San Antonio thing ever, right? We want to give our local. So
your interaction, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I just think it's important, because time gets away. We talk, and next thing you know, it's like it's an hour or something, right? But for me, you're in a unique position because council will talk to the chief. In other words, if you guys hit speed at 1 a.m, he's going to answer you, and he's going to do what you want, all 10 of you, right? But mostly, right? He's going to pacify you one way or the other, right? And so, but you as the public safety committee chair, and then you have some other people that are on there, right? I'll probably get their names wrong, but it's Kavar.
It's Sukor, Dr. Sukor.
Yeah. And then Jalen Mackey Rodriguez.
Yeah, Jalen Mackey Rodriguez, Marina Alderete Gavito, and Mark White.
Yeah, Mark White. And so I was watching the meeting the other day, and it reminds me, and then I was an interim in 2000, so we were doing them. So it's like a ComStat meeting, right? We used to have those where we'd have to present to the chief, and it's about numbers and your area of responsibility. Right. His is a little bigger. Yeah. And then you guys talk about needs, and at one point it was buying brand new service weapons, and then other things. So I watched the one on the other day in February, and all three of these, Rodriguez wasn't there, but Mark White, yes. Yeah. Mari. And then the doctor. Yes. I don't want to say her name. But, they ask questions. And sometimes it's just, as the chair, it's not an impressive presentation. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not talking about fire. Which presentation was it? It was in February. It was the one where you were talking about response times. They were talking about overall call loads. Oh, okay. It was a bunch of stuff. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it says there were 2.2 million calls for service, 1.8 million responses. Yes. The chief said crime is down, workload is up. Okay, no one's disagreeing with that. But there was several times in there where he just misspeaks. And at one point, somebody asked me, I think it was Mark White, and he says, "Hey, can you talk to me about getting the response down to like 24 minutes. And this was his response. Well, that's a good question. What if it was 24 seconds? Maria had to say, no, it was 24 seconds. But see, my point is, Maria's always chiming in for him. And, and to my point, it's like, okay, so if Eric's the CEO of the city, then he's the CEO of the police department. He also asked about somebody, I think it was, I want to get her name.
So, by the way, 24 seconds is nothing to tout.
Well, it's better than going the wrong way.
Well, yeah, sure.
But I would be embarrassed. I would be embarrassed to mention it. I mean, if it was 24 minutes, let's pop a bottle of champagne.
So at one point, he mentioned this Marina, right? Mm-hmm. She says, "Hey, I get the crime numbers, right? But some of our districts feel like crime is worse. Can we do something?" And then so again, Maria chimes in. Some staffer comes in. I don't know who she is. She was smooth though. She answered everything. I'm like, she should be answering these questions.
Maria was there?
No, whoever was in. She was wearing a white dress. I don't know who she was. I imagine she was probably on Maria's team.
Yeah, it may have been. There's another Maria. Kind of like,
she didn't say her name, but she came in and answered. But it's just. He's just not prepared. And it's just like, at what point do you guys, we're paying you a lot of money. You've been here since 2006. You had a 9-month absence at CPS. Yeah. Why aren't you on top of your game? Why are you not reviewing? And this is not your concern, but we've also talked about in disciplinary hearings where he comes in and just botches them completely up. And so we had an officer out for 4.5 years. His name was Vargas. And after 4.5 years, he came back and got his job. And the arbitrator said, "Man, you didn't even know what was going on in the offense report." So my point is, you as the chair, don't you want to polish? You listen to other chiefs and they come in and they know it. Sure. And rather than say, "Well, I don't have those numbers in front of me," you can say, well, maybe I don't have all the exact numbers, but I can talk a little bit about it instead of Maria saying, well, I can talk to you later. Or I can get with you later. Yeah. That's a bad look, right?
It is, because it's not public. Number one, right? The public showing is not positive.
Right.
And I don't want to. I mean, there's good and bad, right? It's public, and so it should be as professionalized and accurate and polished as possible. The other side is that's the reality. That's what we're dealing with, right? And so the public is seeing that.
You're talking about the presentation skills?
Here, or, I mean, is that just the nature of the beast?
What do you mean?
You're saying that's the reality. I mean, not that, you can correct me if I'm wrong, not that it's acceptable.
No.
But is that like the reality, like a concern that y'all are dealing with that shouldn't be like it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
And that's, so he and I, obviously we talked, and I said, from what I have through my research of you, it's like this woman is educated. She's, highly educated, been involved in government politics. I cannot see her listening to that and going, this is not a professional meeting, right? Because you would expect people to be on top of their game, so I don't beat around the bush with certain things or have someone else answer, and like you said, if it is televised and it is, then other people are saying it.
Yeah.
I mean, the good thing is that if the number of viewers match the number of voters, there's not that many. Yeah, unfortunately. You know what I mean?
Been less viewers.
Yeah.
But again, it is still public, right? Anybody has access to it at any time. And it's not professional. It's not professional. And it is, this is who we are presenting to the public, right? I think a chief is well loved in the communities. He goes to the neighborhoods.
Manny Pelaez said he pulls in the top three: the Spurs, HEB, and McManus. It's crazy,
right?
Yeah.
But what it's going back to that thing. How do we feel? What's the reality, right? That there's a different reality, and I have had conversations about that early on. When I first got elected, I was chair of public safety. I think after 6 months in, before I was even chair, I've had.
Did you succeed Anna Sandoval?
Yes. Yeah. So because she was still there, the first term. So I have had those conversations about it, and Maria Villalobos is she's always on her game, like highly, highly professional, and I've come to just rely on her and what she's looking for, what she's giving us. Back to
that's a sad thing to say.
Yeah, that's the truth. I'm never going to share it, right? And I don't. I talk to communities, and he comes up and he speaks with them, but they're not seeing. Let's just going back to number one. We don't know what we don't know. The community doesn't necessarily know. He's giving them this data, and
But she's an accountant. What does she know about public safety?
Well, I mean, she's been doing it a long time.
Yeah, she has been doing it.
What does she know about public safety?
I think she knows a lot about the policy of public safety. What does she know about reality? Again, boots on the ground,
and that's
street
fair.
level. That's different.
Fair. She's worked hard at it.
No, I don't think it's fair. I mean, I don't like someone interjecting, because when you talk about policy, we have a lot of policy, and policies are always made more and more in reaction to prevent something that doesn't look good to people.
Yes.
And when if you follow policy, these officers followed policy to the T, nothing would be done. Y'all would be like, hey, what's going on in the city? And just because something's against policy doesn't mean it's against the law or against their licensing oaths and justifications as a police officer and stuff like that. That's my issue. If I would listen and I would respect someone more if they didn't know, and say, hey, I don't know, instead of interjecting their own, you know what I mean, their own 2 cents.
So
I didn't take it that way. I took it that she works very hard at understanding her responsibility.
I will never say that any of us as policymakers know more about public safety than the people doing the work every day. I'll never say that. So what does she know about it? Again, I think she knows the policy. Does she know what y'all know? It's going back to experience. No, none of us do. We're the policymakers, though, right? That's why it's so important that we keep these kinds of communications open.
But the decisions that she has an impact on can be fatal.
Yes.
And they're injurious. And that's what we're seeing.
But that's on us, though, as policymakers. We're the ones that are making the policy. She's giving us the data and the information, but I can only speak for myself. I'm going to you guys, not you personally, but I go to the police officers themselves. I can go to the UPJs, but I go, I will. Now I'm glad that, I will.
No, it's actually refreshing to hear that.
Yeah.
Everyone has said the same thing. Maddie Pelias has said that. Everyone said that they go to officers to find out really what, and that's what you have to do.
And there are people I went to high school with. There are people that I went to college with. There are people that I met while I was on council. Like they don't have to be like the most long-term relationships. I'll tell you something, and it's maybe a question for you guys, going back to your experience. The last several officer-involved shootings, of course, we get an email right, as soon as they can after it happens, and we read through them. And the first thing I'm looking for is the officer okay, right? Once I get through that, then
Thank
I go
you
back.
for saying that.
Yeah, no, always,
Yeah,
always. It's the first question, always. Or the officers around. Then I go back and I really read it again, right? And they're kind of younger. The last few times it's been 2, 3 years, 7 years. It's not like 20, 30 years.
There's the experience being lost.
Right. So that's data. That's real, right? Like that's showing us what's going on. So very honestly, I think that there should be some kind of mentoring. I know y'all are busy, y'all are retired, but you've got a lot of stuff.
They don't want our ways. Our ways are too aggressive, in a sense. And it here's the thing, because in response to that, what you just said, and it's awesome. I wavered when I retired. I have a tactical training business, firearms tactics and breaching and shield work and all this other stuff. Now I won't teach de-escalation because I don't believe in it. Okay. Now in the sense, because that's a longer conversation, and anybody that is in law enforcement will kind of understand, because I don't believe in putting us further behind the reactionary curve, because that's what de-escalation does. And we're already reactive. It's even more dangerous to ask us to go further back. But you see these, like you're talking about, these young officers, they're being trained a different way. And it's not the way we grew up. And now we're not, hey, we're old school and you should do it. We understand things change. And better technology, better equipment,
more decisive.
More decisive. 100%. But in the end, when you're facing that person that is dangerous, and we don't have a criminal history on it. Mm-hmm. Now, one thing that's good is you can look at this person and it's like, yeah, this guy's a crook and he's a gang member. You can read it right off the bat, the way they dress and all this other stuff. But we're having to treat everybody exactly like if I'm writing a 80-year-old lady a ticket, which I had never done before. But, we're supposed to interact with them the same way. And according to policy and whatever. Now, we know that, and we never really did that. But the training has become really a lot kinder and gentler when crime has gotten higher. And one of the reasons I don't believe, and I don't want to get off on a tangent, that the crime is lower is because we had a huge influx of illegal aliens. And I know people want to call them migrants. I still believe in illegal aliens. Fewer officers, although I hear we're up. I talked to someone recently that we're actually moving up with the recruiting, and that's a good thing.
Well, they need to be more, we do need to be more aggressive.
Sure, yeah. Because we're going to lose them to attrition for whatever reason or whatever. Yeah. But,
and their city's just growing.
The city is growing. We have, and I'm going to say this, and I'm not asking you to agree or disagree. Our DA is soft on crime. He's sore spot. That's obvious of what we're seeing. People are more emboldened, which you mentioned, more and more officer-involved shootings. Why? Because they're more emboldened. They're taking shots. Not to mention they're approaching us with stupid things, trying to egg us on, instigate us with cameras and stuff like that. That's emboldened, to tell you the truth. But there's no way that 2 + 2 can equal 3.
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean? With those stats, that's why I don't believe in that. All of a sudden, it just didn't go, hey, look, wow. And I believe that obviously there's some politics involved. There's some shell game going on, violent crime, nonviolent crime, and that stuff like that. But that our main concern is that these officers get treated fairly.
Yeah.
And understandably, there's processes, just like the justice system. When you face whatever you do, whatever you did, obviously you look at it from a policy standpoint. Sometimes it's really obvious that it was against the law, or possibly, these people that are shooting at police officers, the end result could be and should be, to me, death. You know what I mean? And I mean, that's a potential. But if it's not death, then there's going to be some sort of injury. You know what I mean? Because the other side is that they didn't give up. That's what we all want them to do. Everybody, anybody, no matter what crime they did, officer approaches, gives them commands, recognizable as an officer, and they give up.
Right.
Okay. You know, then nothing
That's
happens.
the ideal situation.
No, yeah. But what's happening is because we don't have a crystal ball, that if we injure them severely, then we get scrutinized for that. And especially, and thankfully, I won't say over, but the George Floyd fallout, because that was going on with Black Lives Matter. It didn't matter. It's like, oh, what? The chief, I had heard, they had a call out, and this guy shot at some police officer, shot through the door, hit one in the head. Thankfully, it scalped him, but it knocked him out. He got hit with a 45 round, just fell. It was downtown. And they get the guy goes back in, it's a barricaded suspect. And they go back in there. One of the first, and I heard this from my buddies there, one of the first questions the chief asked, what color is he? And when he heard that he was an African-American, we're going to be here a while. Wait a minute. How does that dictate how long we're going to be here? You know what I mean? And that's what's going on in a lot of ways. It happens a lot. But you sound very fair. You know, like, hey, there's a process, and if it comes out this way, it comes out this way. If it comes out that way, it comes out that way.
I do try. I'm not reactionary. I went on about how I'll start some shit, you know, but I always say I'm real cool until I'm not, right? We all are. You have to kind of get me to that point where you're not being fair to
Sure.
the community. We have to do this. But I'll tell you, Chair of Public Safety, one of the first things I did was take the committee, and we did sort of a little like mini training, right? We went through some of the training that you guys go through, which
Shoot, don't shoot, stuff
shoot, don't shoot. Yeah. The scenarios, the village. Yeah. And, you know, I'm
Did
like,
everybody go through that?
everybody on the public safety.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because I'm chairman.
Not the
So I
council.
invited
Okay.
the first year, everybody did. I've done it every term. Every time I have a new public safety committee membership, I take them to the training. I do it for both police and fire. And I'll tell you, the reason why I did it was the first time I was like, this is interesting. I want to see what it is, right?
It's fun too, right?
It's super fun and super stressful. I'm not, you know, I grew up, I'm a Texas girl. My dad was a hunter. I grew up with guns. I'm very comfortable with guns. I very strongly believe in gun safety, all of that, right? The gun locks, but I feel pretty comfortable with that. So we go to the range. Not everybody wanted to shoot. They didn't want to be seen holding the gun. Okay. But we went to the village, and that's the one that got me. We have a new shoot, no shoot. Have you seen it's like a video. It's like a 3-sided. It's really as realistic as you can get on video, right? Right.
We grew up from the flat wall one to I've been in an octagon, you know,
really?
yeah.
Okay. And I pushed really hard for that funding for that new shoot, no shoot, because you want to get it as realistic as possible. It's never going to be
especially for cadets,
real.
because in the real world, there's a million different amplifiers.
Yes,
right?
yeah. And you're never going to be simulating that.
But it helps.
But as close as you can get. Yeah. So I really push for that funding. And every time we get funding for equipment, for something for SWAT, for the new shoot, no shoot. Last week, we got a fence around the academy. Like I highlighted every time, look what we're doing. Right. This is what we're doing for you, for all of us, for our community. So we had the first time we had the village, and there was the fellow in the truck, and I had a partner, and she was talking to another council member, and she was talking to the fellow.
So y'all were partnered up and doing a traffic stop or something?
Yeah, a traffic stop. And the guy was in the truck, and I'm back. They tell me, you're going to stay back. She's going to approach him, right? And I had all the gear on. And, you know, I'm like 5 foot tall. This stuff's heavy.
Because they're using ammunition rounds?
They're wooden guns.
Oh, really?
They didn't trust us with we did do the range, which with real, you know.
Right, but they have paint. They're almost like paint.
No, we didn't do those. No, they just had a little wooden gun. Yeah. And they were telling me this is how you get it out, and, you know, with the belt and the whole thing. And it's heavy, right? So I'm there, and I'm like kind of watching, and I'm watching from the back window. And he starts to get agitated. And you start to see him get really upset. And then my partner starts to back up a little, right? And I'm like, instantly, you put your hand here, right? That's just me being like a lay person.
And this is the driver of the vehicle.
Okay. Right? And I'm behind the truck, and she's talking to him as the driver's side. I just gut reaction was to put my hand on this, on the gut, on the
Which
wood,
we get
the wooden
complained
gun.
on. We get
That's what I'm
complained
getting
on for
at.
doing that.
Exactly. It's just like self-preservation, right? With no training.
I don't want to have that extra fractions of a second to go right here. Yes.
Hand flat there, right?
Yeah.
And then it starts to get really crazy. And I start flipping the little thing to get the gun out, right? I could not get it out fast enough, Again, no training. But that 10 seconds, 20 seconds of fear in a simulated, controlled environment with a wooden gun, knowing good and goddamn well that guy wasn't going to do anything to me, right? Or her. I was scared. Yeah. And I remember that moment every single time I pushed.
So that's a great segue. So since 2019, we pulled the numbers of officer-involved shootings. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, we haven't lost an officer, but lots have been injured.
We are on the winning.
Since 2019 to now, there's been almost 160 officer-involved shootings.
160?
160. It might be 159, but the other day we had 7 shot. And so we saw recently in Houston, they gave bail to a cop killer out there, right, in February. I did a little research on New York. I think during that same period of time, the state of New York has paroled 44 police officer cop killers from their correctional system. It just seems like things are going a different way. Before we got on camera, in fairness, I said there were 3 officers shot in August of 2023. The DA pled them out to 45 years. That's Officer Shoquist, Officer Rule, and Officer Chavez. And I'll ask you the same question I asked the others. Yeah. What do you say to them, the officers? One lost his eye, one lost some of his hearing. And of course, they have to deal with being
the rest of their lives, not 45 years.
So what do you say as the potential mayor of San Antonio?
Yeah, I have a real problem with that. I mean, I don't want to look an officer in the face and say, he only gets 45 years, but you spend your whole life without an eye, right? That's not representation. I'm going to say that at the end of the day, our officers are San Antonians, right? Even if you live in the county, you're still a San Antonian. You're serving the San Antonians not just like I do, but we
yes,
do it in our ways,
spend the majority of my time in San Antonio.
Yeah, that's very difficult for me to hear. I'll tell you that I would have a really hard time again looking that person in the face and say this, right? Now, we're obviously the county is separate from the city, but we have to have these collaborations. We have to have conversations. We don't have that right now. We had a while back. There's a lot of pointing back and forth between the county and the city, right? What you're never going to hear me say is that's not my job. Just because it's the county, just because it's not under my maybe leadership purview, it is under my leadership. As your council member, as your mayor. So I can still walk over there, knock on the door and say, we need to talk about this. These are city police officers and having real tough conversations, but also bringing officers, bringing community.
Expectations for the district attorney, whoever that might be, right? These they can't shoot at our cops, right? So I have a follow-up question in that last. Shoot at our cops. Yeah. You can't shoot at your cops.
That's just it. Yeah. That's the end of it.
No, absolutely.
Our officers, at the end of the day, what I said earlier, what all representation means that our San Antonians are safe, that they are safe in wherever they are. That includes our police officers going home safe to their family.
So the scenario that you experienced and that what you talked about, I put my hand on my gun right here. Imagine you being worried about doing something wrong.
Sure.
And then also thinking, are we de-escalating enough? You did this to save fractions of a second to get to your weapon if you had to. Mm-hmm. But then now we're expected to go a little bit further in case this dude is, I don't know, some parish priest that's lost his, I don't know. But, we deal with the action and the behaviors at the time, regardless. I don't care what this person's done. It's just, I want to go home at the end of the day. And that's what's going on. Now, this is not just San Antonio and county. It's across the nation with this de-escalation stuff. And, if you ever want to, I could describe to you what I'm talking about because I don't believe it's just a term. But these people, and it's very subjective because there's never a bullet point that says, hey, go through this class. If you reach this point, then you can escalate. It's always subjective. Someone else looking at it going, well, you move too fast. You went hands-on real quick. Yeah, man, because that's what I felt like I had to do, And all you're watching is a video. I'm sitting there in real life, and stuff. And that's our issue. And
Your safety and the people around you.
100%. And not just my partner, but, in case this guy pulls a gun and the traffic stop, takes a round, hopefully misses me, but it goes into the house across the street, things like that. And so that's what people don't seem to get about
I'll
real
tell
world
you
stuff.
So a couple of things. I think I told the story about the training to say that is, again, very controlled environment. I was in no real danger. My adrenaline was
but you got a little taste.
Yeah,
of what?
tiny.
Yeah,
but that's what I think about every time we're making decisions, right? And that's why I take every public safety committee every time I can, every time there's a new one, to experience that. Y'all need to experience that too. I also do the fire, and I'm terrified of heights, but I rappelled down the 6 stories because that's what they have to do, right? It was a lot. Once you're on it, it's not that bad. But the hardest part, just like anything else, it's the first step. It's getting your leg over that wall, and then you fall into the harness, and there's not a lot.
We used to do that with people, and I tell you, as nervous as it is already, you can tell with certain people, there's always someone checking your gear.
Oh, the first time I did it, my legs were shaking.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but what we would do, as sadistic as we were, would be like, what, that might work okay. Yeah, and you're like, wait a minute.
Don't move left, okay?
Right.
We got our fingers.
right.
Yeah, that's right.
And you could just see
I said that day, look, if I'm gonna fall 6 stories, at least I'm here around a bunch of paramedics, MEMTs, right?
Right. I'm in good hands.
Yeah.
So I know we kept you a long time. I have one more follow-up question too.
I'm sorry, I just want to real quick follow up on that.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I'm being very open. I was a little taken aback when you said you don't believe in de-escalation, but now kind of hearing you talk it through, this is a kind of conversation we should be having, right? I mean,
there is a time and a place for it. I'm not saying eliminate it. There is a time and a place, but it's not as prevalent as people think it is in the law enforcement world.
But I think this is the relationships, right? That the conversations are so key, because I can tell you how, that they did in training, and I've done it a few times since then. Pretty good shot. I've gotten better. But the fact when you said that, it took me aback, and now I'm hearing you understand it. Like that's an education to me, right? That's helpful to me, and that's why I think it's so important to have those conversations with people who have that experience.
But even people with law enforcement experience think that that's the answer.
Yeah.
The chief himself, he mentioned it. I don't know what it was. It was a televised interview, and because we used to operate under the ask, tell, make. We ask you, we tell you, and then we make you. And for years we operated under that. He goes, ask, tell, make. Isn't that a little harsh? No, it's not. Because what we've gotten into with de-escalation is we ask again, we ask again, we beg. And during that time, this crook's mind, his cycle, what we call the OODA loop, observe, orientate, decide, and act, is finishing. Because he's already thinking, oh my God, I'm 3 strikes and you're out. I've got 2. I'm going to miss my kid's birthday. Oh, I got crack in my pocket. Oh, there's a gun. You know what I mean? We don't know what they're thinking. And obviously, if you're switched on and can read it, like, hey, I got to do something first. Sure. But we're always trying to use the least amount of force to not injure someone, even someone that is just a career crook. That is ridiculous. Now, again, I get there's a time and a place, but even people with no criminal history can be just as dangerous.
And then it gets amplified with the media jumping in and the opinions, and then it kind of, you lose that that clear, cool reflection, right? And so,
or they know something.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. I mean, we made the same point. No, I mean that was really.
I love the conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No, thank you for being
I just really appreciate you coming in. We both do. Wish you the best of luck in your campaign.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for spending some of your time with us. Do you have anything else for the Councilwoman?
No, I appreciate that. And we come in here with, I try to come in with no expectations other than having a good conversation.
I appreciate that.
But even through my research, I can read thousands of documents, but not find out what I learned today. And like I mentioned before already, I admire you for reaching out to us and having, I'm encouraged to come on in front of 2 guys that, that have, I don't know how much you know about us.
You're very friendly. There's no.
Well, tell everybody that, all right? Tell everybody on the. But thank you so much. And, we wish you luck in the mayoral race. And should you win, I mean, we're open to conversations.
Yeah.
and things.
Well, I mean,
we didn't lose our experience when we
Yeah.
retired.
And I'm in the very least, I'm in office still for another 3 months, right? So, and I will never, I will always continue to be a voice for my community. So having these discussions are important to me no matter what. But I would really like to keep the line of communication open.
Sure. Thank you. And your work's important, especially on council and then maybe as the mayor, but on the Public Safety Committee on behalf of all of those that serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for everything you do. I appreciate
You
it.
bet.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks for keeping us safe.
Yes.
Right?